Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. I know it's been a while since I made a video, and honestly I've just been a little low motivation and really in the tank prepping for Pro Tour, and I'm also trying to move to a different country, so that's been taking up a lot of time. Don't want to make excuses, but sometimes you're just low motivation and don't make as much content. I do really enjoy making these though. I'm just going to make it even lower effort than before, I guess. I'm just going to sit here and talk about Flesh and Blood. The Pro Tour is in 2 days. Is when I'm flying out to Baltimore. My team's coming with me, and we have the classic constructed meta to look at here. I'll touch on draft a little bit too, because those are the two formats. I believe it's classic constructed first, so got to make sure you do good in those rounds. And I think it's probably good to have CC before draft. Otherwise, it kind of messes with your pairings in CC. But let's look at the CC tier list here. The Tales of Aria heroes, if you can't tell from this, are pretty good. We've got Oldhim and Lexi in S tier, and Briar following up in A tier. Lexi is like very clearly one of the strongest decks in terms of damage we've ever seen. She does a ton of damage while threatening a ton of on-hits, and she's very consistent about it now. Her only disadvantage, really, is that she doesn't have a weapon. If she had a weapon, like if you gave Lexi Rosetta Thorn, she'd be like Starvo levels of strong, or at least close to it. But the fact that she doesn't means she has trouble into stuff like dragons, and can even struggle a little into fatigue, because she doesn't really have all of the tools she needs to play into it. But she does just like an insane amount of damage. She's got zero cost channel mount heroic basically in the form of Rain Razors. She's got Premeditate. She's got Codex of Frailty. All these really strong cards now, as well as Voltaire letting her shoot like 3 arrows a turn. And all of the Ponder tokens, like from Premeditate and from Codex of Frailty, get her that extra arsenal. So she almost always has like a 6-card hand, which is also really hard to beat. So Lexi is Lexi's definitely the strongest like aggressive deck right now. If you're trying to have a proactive game plan and you want to be the one asking all the questions, Lexi's definitely the best option. Fuseless is going to be your best bet. The Ice version has the problem of needing to fuse, so you have to hold an extra card. It makes it so it has to be able to be a little less flexible where it's blocking, and the fuse cards in general just deal a little less damage. You're playing these blues that can't attack as well. So I would say if you're just wanting to pick up a deck and attack your opponent and hope that they can't keep up, Fuseless Lexi is definitely the best option. She's very strong, and she's probably the strongest deck right now in terms of just pure power level. She's just very good. She's not as good as like, old Seeds Chain or Ball Lightning Briar were, but I think in the current meta, she's that version of that. She's very strong. To kind of match that, we have Oldhim, who is kind of the polar opposite. He's the most defensive deck. Oldham's always been the most defensive deck we've ever seen, and he's lost some of his aggro tools. Like Winter's Wail was kind of an aggro tool, and Pulse of Volt or Eisenloft was also aggressive in the sense that it fused Oakenold. Obviously, those can both be defensive, giving Frostbites using his hero ability, but they were better on the offensive. And he didn't really lose any of his defensive tools. He still has Rampart, he still has Crown. Those are kind of the big two. And so he's just very good at blocking out. He can fatigue a lot of decks. And if you don't have a way to stop him from fatiguing you, you're going to lose the game. So Oldhim is kind of, they're both, Oldhim and Lexi are kind of setting the bar. Like, you have to be able to not get fatigued by Oldhim, and you have to be able to disrupt Lexi or outrace her. I don't think you can outrace her, so you need to be able to at least disrupt her while pressuring enough damage, right? Like Command and Conquer. For Briar, she can play Talisman of Warfare. That's pretty good. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about here. So those are the S tiers, right? And they're S tier because they really set the bar of like you have to be able to do this. Unless, I mean, if you're playing one of them, obviously it's just like you have to know the mirror plus beat the other one. If you're not playing either, you really should be playing a deck that you think can beat both of these heroes, right? Like these are going to be the two strongest heroes at the event. It's kind of solidified around that now, and you need to be able to beat both of them or be playing one of them, basically. A tier and even B tier, I think, will show up at the event in top 8. I think your top 8 is going to be like a few of these heroes, Lexi and Oldhim, and then it's going to be like one of, you randomly just pick out of these 8 heroes, right? So like you could say 2 of each of these, right? And then the other 4 heroes are randomized out of these 8 heroes. That would be my top 8. I'd say you take 2 Oldhim, 2 Lexi, and then you throw a dice to figure out which of these 4 are going to be the rest of your top 8. All of these have a matchup that's at least 50-50 or better into one of these 2, and they are like a decently strong hero, right? So Azalea is a great deck into anything aggro. She has a pretty good matchup into Lexi with Red in the Ledger. She's going to beat all the other aggro decks, but she's going to struggle into stuff that has a lot of D-reacts and defensive power, like the 2 Guardians and Dromai. Bravo is actually the deck I'm taking to the Pro Tour. Usually I say just play the best deck, but I don't think I'm a good enough Oldhim to beat the mirrors. And honestly, I probably should just play Lexi, but I like Guardian. Sometimes you just have to play what you enjoy. So I'm on Bravo. I think he's 50-50 or better into both of the S tiers, at least from my results. He's 50-50 or better into both of the S tiers. And I kind of think he beats everything or is at least 50-50 into everything. There's an exception in like Turtle Dash you're probably going to lose to, but I don't think Turtle Dash is going to see nearly as much play as, the other stuff you want to beat. So Bravo he's kind of like, have you ever played like Mauve Shrill Viserai in kind of the last meta? You were like kind of had a 50-50 win rate into everything. Like you didn't destroy any matchups, but you also never really auto lost to much of anything. You just like could beat anything and you could lose to anything. And if you kind of like that, like where you never sit down and you're like, not this, that's probably a deck you could play as Bravo. Like you're not going to be mad sitting down against basically anything other than Dash, probably. Dromai also has a kind of good matchup into the top 2 heroes. She can beat Oldhim. I mean, if they're on Fatigue Oldhim, she should win. And the defensive Big Dragon Dromai has a decent matchup, maybe 45-55 into Lexi. So it's definitely winnable. And I think she's probably a good pick right now as well. She's always going to struggle into the aggro decks. So if you're pairing into like the Briars or the Ninjas that I have down here, she's not going to be loving her life, especially on the Big Dragon version, which is what I would probably play right now. But she beats probably a lot of the stuff you want up here in S tier. I think if you can beat both of the S tier decks, that's a reason to be in A tier. I think that's also why Briar's in here. Briar doesn't get fatigued by Oldhim because they can loop Rites of Replenishment. And it doesn't like beat Lexi, but doesn't auto lose to Lexi either. If you're against Ice Lexi, you're gonna lose, but most Lexis are gonna be on Fuseless as they should be. And against Fuseless, it's just a race in terms of damage. You are probably the weaker deck in terms of damage there, but you do have the powerful combination of Channel Mount Heroic and Force of Nature. And I think if you can get a good turn off with those 2 before you die, you have a chance to win. So I think Briar's in a decent spot there. I'm not really going to go through the C tier because there's a lot down here, and I just wouldn't really recommend playing anything in C or D tier unless you're like really, really good on that hero. If you really, really know one of these, I think in Flesh and Blood, if you were really good on a hero, most heroes you could take to an event and do pretty well on if you just know that hero in and out. But otherwise, if you are like under 100 reps on a hero, you should probably just be playing one of the stronger ones. So like an S tier probably, or maybe an A tier. If you were just like, okay, my hero is Arachne, and I really like Arachne, and I'm really good at them, but I just can't beat anything because the power level is too low on them, and I want to switch heroes. I would just say play Lexi. I would just say play Lexi to basically anyone right now. The fuseless Lexi version is just too strong at being proactive. You kind of have to learn a little, but it's mostly just shooting your opponent with arrows until they die. So that's what I would play. We've got these heroes down here. Azuri can beat Ranger pretty well. It's got a lot of arsenal disruption. Dash can beat the Guardians pretty well. And Icelander gets kind of dunked on by Ranger, but still has a pretty good matchup in the Guardian. Kano can like deal 60 damage on turn 0, right? So Kano is always, I always respect Kano just a little because of how powerful he can be. And there's not that many decks running Oasis Respite. It's like, I think just Oldhim and Dromai running Oasis Respite, and then maybe you have like some Lexis running Shock Charmers, but overall he'll be fine into most of the meta. And that's kind of what I would play. I would expect, I'll say a Lexi is going to win the event. I think Lexi is the strongest deck, and I think she'll win the event. I think she'll probably play an Oldhim in the finals if we're just looking at what I think of the meta. But I think Lexi will win the event, and like I said, I expect 2 of each of these, and then like 1 of each of these. Obviously only 4 of them would make it. But yeah, that's kind of what I think of for Classic Constructed. I'm excited to see how it pans out. I'm excited to play my boy Bravo. Very excited. Been putting in a decent amount of practice on him, and most of my team is on Bravo as well. So very excited to play the OG Guardian himself. Looking at draft, in my personal experience in draft, the riskiest hero riskiest class to play is probably Ranger. That is because you don't have a weapon. And so if you don't get really good cards, if your pool is on the weaker side, you can't like just attack with your daggers if you have a bad hand, right? If you have a hand that doesn't really function great, you can't just attack with your daggers. If you're in Ranger, I think there can only really be 2 Rangers out of the 8 players. And probably just 1 of each, like 1 Riptide and 1 Azalea. If there's a 3rd Ranger, all of the Rangers get weaker, right? And if there's a 4th Ranger, you're all just going like 0-2 or 1-2. Probably. It's really hard to have a 3rd Ranger and even a 4th Ranger. So the only time I would go Ranger is if it seems like I'm just getting red card, red card, red card, red card, red card for like the first 10 picks or something. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's very clear that there's no other Rangers or maybe only 1 other Ranger, I think it's still pretty strong. And I think you could go 3-0 on Ranger still. But it's just the riskiest to be in, so I try to avoid it unless it's very obviously open. Otherwise, I think the ninjas are all fine and the assassins are all fine. I think Azuri is kind of the safest and strongest hero to build because you can take all of the 2-cost generics at red, so cut down to size, humble, destructive deliberation, wreck havoc. You've got 4 different common, but 2 rare and 2 common generic 2-cost attacks. Like you have so many that you can play. And then you can grab a bunch of isolates. The deck's like pretty easy to build. Arachne is a little weaker, but still fine. And then Katsu and Benji, the nice thing there is they don't have a ton of overlap. Katsu doesn't really care about getting yellow deadly duos, and Benji doesn't really care as much about getting like descending gust waves, and even to an extent surging strikes, right? So the ninjas can exist pretty well together at a table. I think like a perfect table would be like 2 Rangers, 3 ninjas, and 3 assassins. You could also have like 4 assassins and 2 ninjas, but then the ninjas might be a little too strong. So it's probably more likely 3 ninjas, and like 1 of the ninjas is just a little weaker. And then like 3 assassins. That's probably like the ideal split at a table if you wanted everyone to have their own strongest possible deck. Would be like 2 Ranger, 3 Ninja, 3 Assassin. I think you'd be in a pretty decent spot. For Ninja, your decks also get a little weaker after you're not the only Ninja of your hero. So after you're the second Katsu or the second Benji, you get a little weaker. But you do have your daggers, which are pretty strong weapons. I mean, you can pitch your blue to attack with 2 daggers, and then you can attack with a 1-cost attack, or you can attack with 1 dagger and then a 2-cost attack. So you're always like able to do some decent stuff on 2-card hands and then block with the rest. So it can be fine. So I would probably I'm gonna try to at the Pro Tour at first try to be in Ninja or Assassin, unless I'm like, wow, I just got Lace with Blood Rot into Lace with Inertia into Red Infecting It shot, and I just like have all this red stuff to play Ranger. Then I'll be like, okay, I'll play Ranger, and I'll probably go 2-1 or 3-0. But you'd really have to like convince me to be doing that in the packs. But yeah, it's kind of a little ramble about draft in the Pro Tour and what my strategy is going in. In CC, I'm going Bravo and just hoping that I have the skill and experience to win all of the 50-50 matchups. And I'm honestly just going in for a good time. I don't put in as much prep as the big teams like Wolfpack and Dragon Shield. And so, I still expect someone like Michael Hamilton or Tarek or Matt Folks to win the event, right? Like, I'm not expecting to win the event, but I'm really hoping to have a good time, and I love to top 32. My goal is always top 32. I feel like if you're not like a player who does it for like a pro team, top 32 is like really your goal. I mean, obviously I would love to win the event, but top 32 is like you get a new PTI so you can go to the next big event, and you get like, I think over $1,000. So that's kind of the goal, and I think I can do it. At the last Pro Tour I went to, I got 40th. So I got to get 8 more slots up to get to 32. Pretty excited for the event. If you see me at Baltimore, come say hi. I've got a few tokens that I can give out to you. I've got a Rune Chant bagel here. This cute little guy. I've got, what else do we have? I think we also have each of the monies. All the good monies. Yeah, we've got a silver here. And we've got a gold. No copper. But yeah, if you see me, come say hi, get a token. And yeah, I got these because I like Briar a lot. So we've got like a lot of the stuff that Briar needs, the gold and the Rune Chants. Come say hi. I'll give you a token. I'd love to see you guys. And I hope you have a good time at Baltimore if you're going. And if you're not going, I still hope you have a good time playing CC and Flesh and Blood. I think it's a fairly open meta right now. You can see we've got, a ton of decks in S through B tier that I think any of these could win the event. I do think the S tier heroes are a little bit a step above the rest of the meta, but I don't think it's a huge gap here. Like this could be like technically A+ tier, and I think it would be a fair assessment. But thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you next time.